Mark chapter 5. Continuing Mark's emphasis on Jesus' action, chapter 5 narrates Jesus healing a demoniac, restoring life to a girl, and healing a woman with a hemorrhage. The demoniac whom Jesus healed was from Gerasa, one of 10 primarily Gentile cities called the Decapolis. The non-Jewish Gentile characteristic of Gerasa, comments Hahn and Mitch, is evident in the presence of a great herd of swine. In accordance with Levitical teaching, the Jewish people did not herd unclean animals like swine. The cast of demons go into the swine, who in turn rush off a cliff into the sea, where they drown. The healing of the demoniac is followed by Jesus restoring a girl to life and healing a woman with a hemorrhage. The girl Jesus restores to life is the daughter of Jairus, who leads a synagogue. Upon seeing Jesus, Jairus falls to his knees and begs Jesus to cure his daughter. A crowd follows Jesus as he makes his way to the sick child. Although many people press upon him and touch him, only one person in that crowd is recorded as being healed, a woman suffering from an hemorrhage. This woman had suffered from this condition for 12 years. This woman's suffering was not only physical, but also was deeply emotional due to the social rejection she experienced by being viewed as unclean since she was losing blood. Loss of blood rendered one unclean since, as Petrie explains, as soon as blood or any bodily fluid touches the air, it begins to die and decay. Death and decay are opposite of God, who is the fullness of life. It was believed that it is unfitting that for the life that the temple and worship spaces represent. It was believed that it is unfitting to bring into a space of worship, above all the temple, what is dying, for this would contradict the life that the temple and worship spaces represent. The woman's social isolation indicated how holiness was defined in Old Testament times. In Leviticus, God commands the Israelites, "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." The Hebrew word for holy is rooted in the word kodesh, meaning set apart, apartness, sacredness. As explained by Petrie, the word holy means to be set apart, and I'm quoting, not just set apart from sin, but set apart for God, just like a husband is set apart for his wife, and a wife is set apart for her husband. Separation was encouraged not only from what is sin, but from what is associated with sin, death and decay, such as loss of bodily fluid that decays upon contact with air. In respect to Israel as a people, the application of this understanding of holiness as separation, explains Hahn, quarantined the people of Israel from the Gentiles and also from those Israelites considered impure, such as the woman with the hemorrhage. Prophets of the Old Testament, though, presented this quarantining as a passing stage for one day. Everyone that survives of all the nations that have come against Jerusalem shall go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Booths. Zechariah 14:16. King Solomon's temple, adds Hahn, built by the Gentile ruler, the king of Tyre, Hiram, was built for not only Jewish worship, but also for Gentile worship, for non-Jewish worship, as evident in Solomon's prayer of dedication. You can see that in 1 Chronicle 14:1 and 2 Chronicles 2:3-18. Fulfilling what the prophets had spoken about and Solomon had prepared, Jesus lived out a new kind of holiness, a holiness that entails not only separation, specifically separation from sin, but also includes embracing that which is separated, so as to transform the separated by holiness, the holiness of God that flows out of Jesus into the woman with the hemorrhage, healing and sanctifying her. In Jesus, two essential aspects of holiness perfectly come together: separation, as the word kadosh points to, and unity, specifically union with God. In commenting on how separation is a fundamental dimension of sanctity, Petrie writes, and I quote, "The first commandment against idolatry is really about the holiness of God. God himself is set apart, and only he is to be worshipped. Why should I honor my father and mother? Well, because fatherhood and motherhood are holy. Your father and your mother are set apart. They are the ones who gave you life. No one else has ever given you a gift like that. So they merit your respect. They merit your honor because of the sanctity of fatherhood and motherhood. Why shouldn't I kill another human being? Because of the sanctity of human life, right? This is something that's set apart. It's different. It's not like the animals, right? It's not like the plants. God has set this particular gift of life apart, and we don't have the right just to take it and treat it as if it's profane, and treat it as if it has no meaning or it has no value. So, the sanctity of motherhood and fatherhood, the sanctity of human life. What about adultery? The reason it is a sin is because of the sanctity of matrimony, right? When a man and a woman marry one another, they set themselves apart for the other. They become holy, set apart from every other man and woman, set apart for one another. So, what adultery does is it desecrates the holiness of matrimony, the holiness of marriage. Same thing with theft. It's about the sanctity of private property. If something belongs to someone else, it's set apart for that person, and I don't have the right just to take it from them because I want it. If separation is excessively emphasized, then chaotic dissolution can result. If unity is emphasized alone, totalitarian unity can result, where uniformity is forced upon all. In Jesus, as the second person of the Trinity, unity and diversity are perfectly in harmony. And through Jesus, what is separated into diversity is brought into unity while respecting diversity. Another error involving separation, as Jonathan Pageau points out, is when diversity, resulting from separation, is identified with unity by unifying reality through a fluid understanding of identity. When this takes place excessively, confusion results on levels like cannibalism, where the distinction between human and animals is practically erased, and incest can result where the distinction between child and parent become unhealthily enmeshed. Believing Jesus could heal her, the woman suffering from a hemorrhage touched Jesus with a touch that was different from all the people pressing in on Jesus. For she just touched Jesus, writes Petrie, humbly, and I quote, with faith, with supernatural trust. For this reason, comments Hahn, Jesus draws attention to the woman's touch as distinct from all the other people touching him by asking, "Who touched my garments?" The image of the woman touching Jesus and being healed well represents the sacraments, since we touch Jesus through the sacraments. May those who touch Jesus in the sacraments touch Jesus as the woman with the hemorrhage did, with humble faith. Upon healing the woman, Jesus says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Although this woman was likely older than Jesus, observes Petrie, Jesus nonetheless calls her daughter, since in his divinity, Jesus may rightly see her as a daughter. After healing the woman, Jesus makes his way to the synagogue ruler's house, where Jesus raises the ruler's 12-year-old daughter to live to life to life. The text is not clear on whether Jesus raised the girl from the sleep of death or a sleep induced by her illness, such as a coma. Ancient Jewish culture, reflected in the New Testament, described death as a kind of sleep. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. That is in 1 Thessalonians 4:14. Explaining the connection between sleep and death, Petrie writes, I quote, Ancients always saw an analogy between sleep and death. That sleep, in a sense, was like a little sacrament of death. At the end of each day, we succumb to our weakness. We have to close our eyes. We have to lay down and sleep. And in the morning, we rise again, right, to begin a new day. By raising the young girl from sleep and later Lazarus from death, Jesus affirms, comments Petrie, that although death is natural to man's mortal nature, it is not natural from the perspective of God's original plan before the fall of Adam and Eve. For God created human beings for eternal life. As the Catechism teaches, and I quote, "Even though man's nature is mortal, God has destined him not to die. Death, therefore, was contrary to the plans of God, the Creator, and entered the world as a consequence of sin." Jesus came to heal us from sin and death, a principal consequence of sin. His healing ministry continues today through the sacraments, especially baptism and confession, which both can raise a person from the spiritual death to spiritual life. Raising a person from spiritual death, though, is much more difficult for Jesus than raising a person from physical death, observes Hahn. As evident in the gospel account, due to the hardness of heart, Jesus' opponents were more asleep in their sin than the young girl was in her sleep, and Lazarus was in his death.